The numerologists, people who are obsessed with numbers, it's akin to the science or pseudoscience of astrology. I bet they're having a field day today. It is 1111. I was signing some paperwork and documents this morning and just noticed that I was adding after my signature 1, 11, 11, or the first month, the 11th day of the 11th year, or it's the 11th year, 11th day of the first month, depending on how you look at it via U.S. style or European calendar style. One angle that hasn't been covered in the Giffords Roll Green shooting at the hands of the Grim Reaper mass murderer, as I have dubbed him, Jared Lee Loughner. And that's an angle covered by Paul Joseph Watson. I think it's a very important aspect of this story. Establishment ignores violent rhetoric from eco-leftist. And we did on the Sunday show show the video of the 1010 project financed by the British government, showing children being murdered, 9-year-olds in a private school setting in England, being asked, will you support carbon taxes? What are you going to do to cut your carbon output of carbon dioxide? And of 20-plus students, the vast majority say, I'm going to submit totally. I'm not going to take a hot bath, things like that. I'm, going to walk more places. And several of the children say, I'm not going to do anything. And the teacher says, fine, that's your choice. And then she hits a red button, and they explode, flinging guts and blood and brain matter all over the teacher and the rest of the students. And then it cuts to a boss at a company asking his employees who's going to make cuts. And the majority, of course, in a peer pressure system say yes, but a minority says no, so he murders them. Then it cuts to a soccer team, the same thing. And it just goes on and on and on from there. And there are all these other TV ads and messages in television programs and all these different editorial articles, really by the thousands that I've seen over the years, promoting that humans are parasites, humans are scum, humans are trash, and that little baby humans are some type of larva of the devilish parasite, because the social controllers know that if they can demonize babies and demonize children and kind of glamorize abortion, like the new MTV show is doing, how cool it is, how chic it is to murder your baby in the womb and then write poetry about it. You can't make this stuff up. Then you'll devalue all life. And at the end of every nature show that I've seen for decades, they demonize humans at the end and show how horrible we are. We're being taught to hate ourselves and to be guilty and then to pay taxes and lower our standards of living and give up our liberties and be surveilled in the name of the new eco-religion. And it's all anti-human. And it's all about population reduction. And one of the sacraments of it is abortion and hating your fellow man and dreaming about forced population reduction. I mean, it's just pushed everywhere. Like Newsweek last year with the cover, The Case for Killing Granny, admitting the death panels and how great it is, and then having a some set system where there's a set size of the pie, and if you're going to get ahead, somebody's got to lose, instead of a win-win-win type psychological economic outlook that is the real reality and that can bring humanity forward and onward and upward to the stars. They want to turn us against each other. So what does Bill Gates say? Well, if we don't give Granny health care, we can hire 10 teachers. But if we don't, we've got to lay them off. They're turning us against each other. I hear mainline leftists who mean well all the time on talk radio and read their articles in the news, and they describe how the pie is only one size and how we've got to take from the rich to give to the poor. Well, the real system is the ultra-rich control the big governments of the world, and they use that as a system to consolidate the wealth into their own hands, vertically integrate it, and then shut down avenues for new wealth formation by the middle class. And it's been that way throughout history. The ultra elite is always waging war against the middle class. And it was they failed to suppress the middle class in the Renaissance in Europe, starting about 500 years ago. And this whole New World Order and Malthusian economics and mercantilism, and which is its modern name is globalism, that is all an attempt to end the Renaissance and bring in a new dark age of control. And so everything we do here is to educate people about that real scenario, that real paradigm, and to resist it. Now, continuing here, this article, again, is from prisonplanet.com. Establishment ignores violent rhetoric from eco-leftists, while the establishment has invoked the supposed threat of vitriolic right-wing rhetoric as a tool with which to bludgeon freedom of speech in response to the Tucson shootings. It has conspired to sweep under the carpet the far more extreme and threatening language and images used by so-called leftists in the context of the climate change debate, rhetoric that has led directly to crimes and murders. While Sarah Palin is castigated for using an image of crosshairs targeting political districts, leftists produce violent and bloody films that depict children being liquidated in an orgy of blood and guts for not towing the line of the political dogma of man-made global warming. You've had all these weird cases of parents shooting their babies, shooting their toddlers, and then shooting themselves. We've seen cases of that. People setting their own houses on fire, burning it up, chanting, "It's for the earth, it's for the earth." We've seen, the guy taking over the Discovery Channel facility because it's for the earth and the humans were parasites. We see it constantly out there, and it's lauded and praised as if it's something good. And now we have the Democrat governor running in the campaign for U.S. Senate in West Virginia, firing a 30-6 through the cap and trade bill. You've got now a lot of cases documented at Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.com. Drudge Report's got a bunch of them up, where they're calling for Sarah Palin's murder and putting crosshairs on her, or Democrats putting crosshairs on districts they wanted, or Obama saying, let's bring guns. The Republicans bring a knife. We're going to bring guns to that knife fight. All of this is symbolic, and it's part of the political discourse. And so when the Democrats hypocritically try to come in and say, end this rhetoric, when I really looked at it from a nonpartisan perspective, outside the left-right paradigm, the left are some of the most vicious race baiters and hate promoters and balkanizers and people that use military terminology even more than the Republicans. But hey, I've got an idea. How about we follow the First Amendment? Doesn't matter if you're an atheist, a libertarian, a communist, a liberal, a conservative, a freedom lover. That's what I call myself. That's the best way to describe what I'm into. How about we just all have our freedom of speech? And as long as you don't say, kill someone, as long as you don't go on air or go up to somebody at the checkout counter and say, I'm going to kill you, you're A-OK. As long as you don't tell people to go kill people. Remember Michael Reagan? We could play the clip here. If you doubt it, just search the term. Michael Reagan says, kill Mark Dice. Mark Dice, frequent guest on this show, had questioned the official 9/11 story, as 6 of the 10 9/11 commissioners have. And Michael Reagan said, I will pay for the bullets. This is where he lives. I'm serious. He said, I'm serious. I want you to kill him. I will pay you to kill him. I will pay for the bullets. And we need to line up all the other 9/11 truthers and shoot them. Now, the FBI was called. Mark Dice did get threats, by the way. I'm going from memory, that happened a few years ago, but at work and all over the place. And nothing was done. In fact, Michael Reagan had YouTube pulling it down all over the internet, including they tried to do it on our channel, but we filed against them in federal court, and they had to remove their fake claim because it was fair use. Somebody's calling for a murder and a hit, and we're playing it and responding. We have absolute right to do that. 100%, no doubts about that. So the courts were there to help Michael Reagan, say, kill people. And even if you disagree with people who believe the official fairy tale about 9/11 or folks that don't believe in it, it's all their right. You don't say, go kill them, go to their house, go to their work, I'll pay for the bullets, murder them. You know, you hear these calls, and it came out 2 weeks ago that in a major law enforcement symposium, it made national news here in the U.S., that the main speaker was telling police, local police from all over the country, there were thousands of them there, that we need to go ahead and just kill all the quote, Muslims, because they're all terrorists, and go ahead and kill their children, too. And then the reporters were asking the cops there, do you agree with that? And they're like, yeah, you heard him. See, this is the mind control. I mean, how do you think the Nazis did what they did? Hitler demonized certain groups, blamed those groups for everything, got a big tribal fervor going, and Germans who were very moral people. I mean, I've studied that culture from the contemporary historians and anthropologists and sociologists at the time. Germans were very moral, very low crime rate, followed the rules, all that stuff, but they had that weakness for following orders. So they did all those things. Same thing with the Soviets and the Russians. But I'm done talking about that. I want to run through some of the latest developments dealing with the shooter, Jared Lee Loughner. Some big developments. Then we're going to open the phones up. And then we've got David Icke joining us, the Southern Poverty Law Center with Keith Olbermann on MSNBC. They say it's all his fault. The reason we've got David Icke, former head of the Green Party over in England, best-selling author, one of the better-known, quote, conspiracy theorists in the world, is because doing research on the Grim Reaper Tucson shooter, that's the biggest news story right now in the world, not just in the United States, it's big news all over the planet, and being used to further disarm populations while governments continue to be one of the #1 causes of death. They never hype that up and play that up, or the millions of children that died in World War II, in Germany, in Europe, in Russia, in Asia. There's never a discussion of those millions. As Stalin said, one person dies, it's a tragedy. 10,000 die, it's a statistic. The media is not hyping that up. But we've got Icke coming on in about an hour from now, or a little more than an hour, bottom of the next hour, because it's just so crazy to have the Southern Poverty Law Center's Director of Research, Potok, get up on television and say that Ayn Rand and then David Icke are to blame. When the Grim Reaper, devil worshiper, nihilistic, political independent, said nothing about David Icke. And they talked about lucid or awake dreaming in one of his rambling videos. I mean, lucid or wide awake dreaming. I saw a Tucson newspaper yesterday saying it's my fault, or that I could be connected because I'm in the Richard Linklater movie Waking Life about lucid awake dreaming. I mean, there have been books written about it for hundreds of years. I'm in a movie put out about it by Fox Searchlight. I guess Fox is to blame. The Tucson sheriff for Pinal County, I mean, I don't need to play the clip here. You know it's one of the biggest stories in the country right now. Top of the Drudge Report, ABC News, top story. They're actually at ABC covering it like, I mean, the Drudge Report is just pointing out the absurdity, but ABC and others are taking it serious like, yeah, maybe Rush Limbaugh caused this. Some screwed up, drugged out, clearly schizophrenic freak, has all the hallmarks of being under mind control, told people he was under mind control, told others that he was concerned about mind control. I mean, I don't know what the truth is, but we know those programs exist. And then magically, he shows up and shoots all these people, reportedly only got one 18-round clip out and shot 18 people, killing 6. I mean, I'm a great shot with a handgun. And I've got high-capacity Glocks myself that take the 30-round, you know, where it sticks out on the bottom. I've got that for defense. And I'm a good shot, but I couldn't imagine walking around shooting people and calmly hitting all 18 of my targets. I mean, that's just amazing. This whole thing is very, very suspicious, and it stinks to high heaven. And this Judge Roll was very patriotic, had ruled against Clinton on the Brady Act, the best federal judge out there, according to Sheriff Richard Mack, who, of course, was the sheriff there in that Arizona county that dealt with that back in 1994. Big Supreme Court case, one of the most important in history, even more important than the one just a few years ago or last year to the Second Amendment. But I wanted to go ahead and first play this clip where Chip Burley, that sounds like some kind of sandwich you get at Chick-fil-A, Chip Burley implies that Ron Paul and Alex Jones, this is on Democracy Now!, fed out all over the country, aired on NPR stations, aired on PBS TV stations. I'm subjected to it every day here in Austin. And here I am being blamed for this, and Rush Limbaugh is being blamed. I mean, this is outrageous. And this is defamation, this is slander, this is libel. You can put whatever name you want on it. But because Ron Paul wants to follow the Constitution and have constitutional money, and this guy made one rambling statement about a new monetary system, it's all our fault. We should just let the Federal Reserve devalue the currency. Here's that short clip or part of it from Democracy Now! With the Ford Foundation, Bill Gates Foundation funded propaganda. Here it is.
Well, as the Southern Poverty Law Center points out, comes from a patriot icon named David Wynn-Miller of Milwaukee, who has a whole website talking about the use of grammar and numbers as a way of mind control to keep people from focusing on the great Federal Reserve conspiracy theory. The idea that the Federal Reserve was created as part of a vast conspiracy is not just embedded in the minds of people who are disturbed, but it's widely shared on Alex Jones' website and by Ron Paul, elected Representative Ron Paul. So what we have here is a right-wing milieu in which Mr. Loughner apparently wandered through and posted.
Okay, so again, I want to play the clip. We kind of ran into the break there. Here is Chick-fil-A, one of these left-wing people that runs around demonizing anyone that wants liberty and freedom, and they pose as if they are nonpartisan think tank, pointy head experts telling you about the dangerous extremists. Remember, they'd make jokes at the Southern Slime Center and other organizations for years. There's no world government. There's no plan to devalue the dollar. The Federal Reserve isn't private. Anyone that says it is, that's code for racism. But they've gone too far now, saying if you don't like health care, that's code for not liking black people. And folks started going, what? Oh, and the ADL came out against Glenn Beck. Why, he's talking bad about George Soros helping round up and rob Jews. That's anti-Semitic. Well, I mean, I've got a 60 Minutes piece from more than 15 years ago. You can just type into YouTube George Soros 60 Minutes, and you'll have him going, well, I didn't really feel bad about it. It was how I survived. I did go, and if I wouldn't have helped to take what they had, others would have. I mean, we can play those clips. Oh, you're against George Soros. I mean, Media Matters. All these organizations, they're funded by Ford Foundation. They're funded by Soros. They're funded by other big globalists. They're funded by Bill and Melinda Gates to go out there and shut up anybody that doesn't want government health care. But Bill Gates at least is honest. Well, if you take the end of care for, say, an old grandma, you could then not lay off 10 teachers. The patient. And then Times of London headline, secret meeting of world's elite on population reduction. I mean, they want the world for themselves. And so now it's all over the news every day. Global government, Bilderberg Group, you'll pay your taxes to a private IMF World Bank consortium, carbon taxes, national VAT taxes. And I get to have Chick-fil-A Burley his real name's Chip Burley, again, sounds like a potato chip or something, constantly over the years harrying me, running around telling weak-minded people that Ron Paul and myself and others are supposedly, generating this atmosphere that caused this guy to go off. And now we learn these people are like the Addams family. Mommy worked for the government. Daddy was always getting in arguments with the neighbors and was, quote, very angry. The guy is an atheist. That's what I've always found. These vampire dressing, Grim Reaper type of vampire wannabe groups. They always say they're atheists when they're wearing a devil shirt and painting their fingernails black, and it's like, and then you go, oh, what do you listen to on that iPad? Oh, here it's devil, war, devil, slaughter, murder, death, blah, blah, kill the children. Blah. One time, I got drugged by one of my cousins to kind of see a mainline in college rock and roll band. And we took some dates out to it. And we go in, and they had Marilyn Manson before Marilyn Manson was popular and really known. And I walk in, and there's this skinny guy, looks like a concentration camp victim, and he's vomiting on stage. And the name of the record, I guess, at that time was Smells Like Children. And there were little toddler onesies stapled up on the speakers, and he was throwing them to people, screaming about murdering children and how much fun it was. And needless to say, we left in about 5 minutes. I was like, is this really... And this is what young, weird, soft people who, I guess, never had any adventures, never had any hardship, or when they did get beat up when they were 12, Mommy and Daddy got real mad about it. They didn't tell Junior, go out and fight back. So then they just sit there getting beat up on, so they decide to be scary vampire people and to, go around trying to intimidate people. Then they go buy guns, and they go and shoot people. Harris and Kleinbold. It's the same story every time. That's why Sunday I called it. I said, this guy's a devil worshiper. This guy's a vampire wannabe. I could listen to the music in his favorite video, that Grim Reaper character out there burning the American flag, all his atheist stuff, all his talk about how great abortion is, and I called it. I know these people. It isn't hard to call it. It's kind of like you're in a deer stand and a coyote runs out. Well, that's a coyote. Or a timber wolf runs out. That's a timber wolf. Or a white-tailed doe comes out. Or you see one come out with a baby that's got spots on it. That's a fawn. Or you see a big, fat, red-breasted blackbird hopping around on the ground. That's a robin. I've got my instincts. I've got my brain. I know how to assess people. Okay? And then meanwhile, I'm sorry, American flag-burning, devil-worshipping abortion lovers are not Rush Limbaugh or Alex Jones or Ron Paul influence people. Let's get that straight. Now, it is true that the hottest thing on the internet and the hottest thing in culture is reforming the currency and getting rid of the Federal Reserve and restoring our sovereignty. As he said last year, as Zbigniew Brzezinski to the CFR, for the first time in history, because of technology, the people are awake and have recognized the global elite and how they're pulling the strings, and the globalists are in trouble. So, yes, you are going to have more schizophrenics and more nuts now attracted to this because it's the hottest issue out there. Why do you think they let conspiracy theory on TV? Then it was so effective, they're trying to quietly pull it. And I've confirmed by insiders at TV networks. I mean, I have the documents, but I'm not allowed to show them because it would identify who did it. This is not from the production company of the show or Ventura. This is from people inside who program the computers, the DVRs nationwide, and companies that run those agreements. There's all sorts of threats of litigation going on, you name it. Some cable systems are refusing to delete the entire Jesse Ventura 2 seasons. Oh, yes, Time Warner is now giving orders that they all be deleted. Unprecedented. They've got this other guy. He's here in my news stack. And it's also up on Drudge today, who's put out the show Decoded on History Channel. And he's in the news today admitting that he secretly has worked for the government. And, they got me to be in their Bohemian Grove episode they've now listed for, the 27th of this month. And I've agreed to not talk about it a lot until it comes out, but I have my misgivings. I'll just tell you that. And once I got on the ground with them, well, you can read the story. It's up on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. It's also up on Drudge. It's one of the top stories there. How do you pronounce it? Brad Metzler? It's Metzler. Here it is. It's New York Daily News. Author Brad Metzler was recruited in government agency, horrified at how easy it is to attack the U.S. And he's the star of and the writer of these conspiracy shows. And in the one episode I've watched part of, because I'm busy and I don't really watch television, it's one with Mark Dyson. They're making fun of Mark, saying the Statue of Liberty is really a man in drag and that it's Lucifer. And then they go to top professors who go, yes, it is Lucifer, but it's the good Lucifer. I mean, it is Lucifer, okay? The French Illuminati built the stinking thing and gave it to us, and that's what it is. But see, it is Lucifer, but it's the good Lucifer, but we're kooks for knowing it's Lucifer and not liking it. Kind of like there is a world government, but you still are going to cause the loving little devil worshippers to go shoot people if you're against the world government. It's not that this world government's coming in and causing all this friction and all these crises and that nuts are going to go off because of it. I mean, we've got this major tectonic global banking movement towards tyranny and oppression and cutting off resources to populations in a post-industrial world. You know that's going to create friction and fireworks. And the globalist engineers know that full well and say they're going to capitalize on the chaos to bring in their order. And then Rush Limbaugh and Alex Jones and Ron Paul and Sarah Palin are going to be blamed in the process. I mean, this guy talked about awake dreaming, and now they're saying it is Alex Jones, it is the movie Waking Life. And they're blaming David Icke, who doesn't even talk about awake dreaming that I've heard. We've got him coming up. I mean, this is insane. But this is their guilt by association. Let's go ahead and play that clip again of Chip Filet. Here he is.
Is used in the Patriot and far-right movements to describe the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution, which freed the slaves and gave the right of citizenship to anyone born in the United States.
So you're a racist.
References to basically conspiracies in which the government is a...
What does that have to do with anything about these people, don't think blacks should have freedom? What? And then it's always, they don't like the health care. That's code for not liking black people. Oh, they're criticizing the White House staff budget. Why is that, Chris Matthews? Well, they just don't like Michelle Obama because she's black. Gee, we're going to have thunderstorms today. Why is that? Because there's black people. I'd like cheese on my hamburger. Oh, because you don't like black people? I like to wear a blue sports jacket today because you don't like black people. Did you wear that white shirt, Mr. Jones, because it's a symbol of not liking black people? Come on, let's be honest about it. I mean, they'll just nonsensically inject it into everything to punch those buttons to get people to become emotional. All right, let's finish the clip here.
Pressing the people and perhaps in his mind engaging in mind control on behalf of vested interests who control the money. This is a long-standing right-wing conspiracy theory.
This issue of grammar?
Well, as the Southern Poverty Law Center points out, comes from a patriot icon named David Wynn-Miller of Milwaukee, who has a whole website talking about the use of grammar and numbers as a way of mind control to keep people from focusing on the great Federal Reserve conspiracy theory. The idea that the Federal Reserve was created as part of a vast conspiracy is not just embedded in the minds of people who are disturbed, but it's widely shared on Alex Jones' website and by Ron Paul, elected Representative Ron Paul. So what we have here is a right-wing milieu in which Mr. Loughner apparently wandered through and posted information about his own beliefs.
And it just goes on. I'm done. I can't hear anymore, but thank you. Let's get the next clip ready, please. And then we're open the phones up to get your comment on all the things that are happening politically right now, but obviously, specifically, what you really think is going on with this shooting and all the new bills being introduced to limit how much ammo you can buy or have. or to restrict handguns. I flipped through the channels and heard many of the talk show hosts this morning on XM, including Howard Stern, calling for banning handguns. I mean, this is just outrageous, absolutely outrageous. All that would ensure is that if folks hadn't tackled this guy, the other person that came up and was also involved in subduing him wouldn't have had a gun to stop this guy if he needed it. I mean, it's total common sense, and they know it. But now it's a right-wing conspiracy theory to talk about the Federal Reserve being private or there being a conspiracy to set it up. They just had the 100th anniversary of the 1910 meeting at Jekyll Island, Georgia, and Bernanke, current head of the Fed, a bunch of other top bankers, including Alan Greenspan, former head of the Fed, chairman, they all went there and gave creepy speeches about the criminality of the banks and how 100 years ago their predecessors met secretly there to, I mean, they publicly meet and laugh at everyone about their secret meeting. And at the time, the heads of the big private banks that are now the shareholders of the private Fed, they owned the big newspapers and ran, and this is all admitted now, column after column where they were saying they were against the Federal Reserve Act. See, they wrote it, gave it to their congressman they owned. This has all come out. They admit this. This is in mainline, New York Times best-selling books written by the establishment, written by these guys. So they did this con game where they said, oh, please don't throw me in the briar patch. And that's exactly where Briar Rabbit wanted to go. They write it up. They come out and say, we don't want that Federal Reserve Act. Oh, just like we didn't want the Sherman Antitrust Act. Oh, that let us make all our robber baron money tax-free. It's horrible. They wrote that as well. The average person doesn't even know what the Sherman Antitrust Act is, much less that it was a shill operation. So, see, they act like, oh, we don't want Federal Reserve. That'll run everything and control us. And because everybody knew then the banks were big and corrupt. Thomas Jefferson had written about it. Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, later. Lincoln had written about it before him. Andrew Jackson. I mean, that's what elections were about, was the money power. But now, the perceived knowledge for the average American is it's kooky and weird to talk about the Federal Reserve. For decades, that's been the view in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Not anymore. People have rediscovered offshore banks, the same ones that have destroyed all these third world countries and made them dependent. Through the money power, the power to issue fiat currency at will, allows them the unfair trade advantage to buy off governments and take over. And this guy is still giving you the old tired line that it's a conspiracy theory and that this contributed to this malaise, this morass, this swamp that this guy was in. That's incredible. Let's go ahead and play the Southern Poverty Law Center minion on with Keith Olbermann, blaming this on Ayn Rand and David Icke, of all people. Here it is.
This man also talked quite a lot in these strange videos of his about what he called conscience streaming, but I think is almost certainly meant to be conscious streaming, which is an idea that also has been kind of tossed around on the radical right, in particular by a kind of British conspiracy theorist by the name of David Icke. So a lot of these ideas, his burning of the flag, his talking about the government as treasonous, and using mind control to control the rest of us.
That's enough. So if you don't want to have private central banks destroy the currency and your savings, if you want the Congress to take control of the issuance of currency and credit, as the Constitution states, you heard it. It's a radical conspiracy theory. And it's causing people to dress up like Grim Reapers and burn the American flag. It's all our fault. The big news today is that Arizona suspect had made death threats. The sheriff said they never did anything about it. A death threat is a terroristic threat and is illegal. And if the threat was something you were really thinking about carrying out, it's even more time in prison. But in this culture, they allow people to make death threats, and then nothing is done about it. And then they say, oh, now all of you have to lose your liberties, your freedoms, because somebody acted out on this. And now we've put together an article that I think shows premeditated knowledge of this. Liberal media was already prepared for violence. And that's a good headline with Matt Ryan. You probably just want to add so people know what it's in connotation. Liberal media was already prepared for violence in Tucson. Let's add in Tucson to that so folks know what's going on here. Continuing, the terrible shooting in Tucson, Arizona left 6 dead, including federal judge John Roll and critically injured Representative Gabrielle Giffords. Was the act of a 22-year-old that was immediately profiled as a Tea Party member. Well, I mean, he wasn't even just profiled. They just made that up. They just put out the false profile. The mainstream media focused on 2 points in his many ramblings, including government mind control and refusing to use a currency not backed by gold or silver. What is most curious about it is that it appears he was profiled as the shooter before there was even a shooting. In multiple interviews, Representative Giffords, the idea of a Tea Party activist using violence against her was brought up either right before or after the mention of the upcoming vote to recall controversial health care reform. Yeah, and this is also part of hyping copycatters. You know, every time there's been a big school shooting and they hype it, then we see aftershocks and more. And then they try to hype that, and then there's aftershocks of that. And then finally, it doesn't have the shock value, so the media doesn't cover it as much, and it dissipates. But weak-minded, mentally ill people who are easily suggestible or brainwash, mind control Manchurian candidates that are out there operating, this is then their trigger. And he's got videos linked in here. In the video below, Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords was interviewed about an incident where the front door of her office was shattered while stock footage of Tea Party protesters waving the Gadsden flag were rolling. And we know we've caught the Democrats over and over again knocking out their own windows. I'm not saying she did this, but it turned out in Denver and other areas they have been caught. You know, it's the famous thing of the white lady carving the Barack Obama on her face, and then saying black men did it, and it turned out she did it. Or black students are caught many times putting swastikas on their dorm or crosses in their yards. Same thing with Jewish students. I mean, this is something that doesn't matter what group it is. They all do it for sympathy. It's really a false flag. It's a frame-up. The interview was steered in the direction that would indicate that the Tea Party is posing a threat against Democratic lawmakers. They touch on Sarah Palin's use of crosshairs on the site, explaining that this could potentially cause someone to use violence against the Democrats featured in the graphic. And don't people see by hyping that, they're actually putting it in the minds of these people? And it turns out that the Grim Reaper shooter, Jared Lee Loughner, was obsessed with her at least 3 years back into 2007, 3.5 years back, and that he'd gone to her events. He kept letters from her, constituent letters in a safe. And now there was all this constant hype of her on television over and over again. Are you worried? The crosshairs, they're coming to get you. And they're watching. Was the schizophrenic. Easily suggestible. So in a way, it was just a culture of media mind control that contributed to this. You could say that. All right, we're into hour number 2, and I've been rambling in the last 60 minutes. We got David Icke joining us for 30 minutes coming up. Then I'm going to get into other news issues like the economy. Huge development. Sarkozy takes G20 case to Obama as food prices soar. His answer is, again, giving global government power and global taxation power to the G20 to control currency devaluation worldwide. But you've got to read deeper into the article to understand that. Meanwhile, the Southern Poverty Law Center and all these other groups will demonize you if you read the Reuters article and talk about the offshore-owned Federal Reserve engaging in this with dollar devaluation. You're not supposed to talk about it. It's a conspiracy theory. And if you do, a psychopath fits the MO with the skulls and the death and the loving abortion. Boy, that's a spin machine that within hours of this happening, I've got the quotes here. Keith Olbermann came in and said, America, put up your guns. The era of dangerous political rallies is over. You mean where all these big union thugs are caught everywhere beating people up? Or the Brown Berets are beating people up? If you dare come out on a 4th of July parade in L.A., You mean all those? I mean, I call it like I see it. And for every Republican Rand Paul supporter that steps on somebody's head, I can show you 10, 15, 20 examples of lunatic, communist, Democrat supporters who righteously are running around beating up people because they heard if you don't like big government, you hate black people. And so now we learn the bombshell research of Matt Ryan that integrates him with this Reuters article. Arizona suspect had made death threats. The sheriff, who's busy blaming Rush Limbaugh, said. And you can say what you want about Rush Limbaugh. I don't like the fact that he supports hardcore drug penalties, but then is caught himself with synthetic heroin, Oxycontin. But that isn't the issue here. Rush Limbaugh contributed nothing to this schizophrenic nutcake. Sarah Palin, nothing. This guy was out of his mind, obsessed with this woman. Did have some white supremacist leanings, it looks like. He was into everything scary and frightening. I think I saw an Atlantic story and a Salon story that got it right. He was a schizophrenic nut who was into anything he saw as scary and ominous. So I guess you could blame the whole world for this. I can't believe there's a Tucson publication linking me to it because I'm in the movie Waking Life. But again, that's this childlike Soviet culture of where one person does something wrong, we've got to punish everybody else. That's not the telltale signs of a free society. Okay? Now, we're going to go to break here in a minute, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to take a lot of your calls, but please have your question or your comment ready. Julio, Jonathan, Chuck, Ed, Ronaldo in Italy. We'll go to Ronaldo in Italy first. My mouth starts watering thinking of Italian food and a fine Chianti. But we're gonna go to Ronaldo here in just a moment when we come back. But this is big news. Liberal media was already prepared for violence in Tucson, and it's up on Infowars.com right now. It just went up, in fact. He'd given it to me to proofread during a break just because I act as editor a little bit around here. I didn't even know it wasn't up yet. So good job, Matt, while he's busy producing the show with Jaron and Marley and Phil. He's also in there writing articles. Matt Ryan. Liberal media was already prepared for violence in Tucson. This is big news. They weren't just ready. In fact, I want an editor's note at the top from Alex Jones. They were there prompting it. They were there suggesting it. Oh, crosshairs on this district. Someone's going to kill you, Congresswoman. Over and over again, they kept asking her, are you ready to be killed? Are you ready to be killed? Are you ready? We are live, ladies and gentlemen, and we've got a very important story right now that is up on Infowars.com. We're also posting it up at PrisonPlanet.com. And the headline is, liberal media was already prepared for violence in Tucson. And during the break, I wrote up a little blurb that's going to be posted on the top of the article in the next few minutes that really crystallizes what's happening. And then you can read through Matt Ryan's article and get all of the facts. In fact, they just went live with what I wrote during the break. Liberal media was already prepared for violence in Tucson. Editor's note from Alex Jones. What we have here is a clear case of self-fulfilling prophecy. The national and local media knew exactly what they were doing. They hyped to a pool of 30 million. They hyped to a pool of 300 million Americans over and over and over again that a deranged Tea Partier is going to gun down politicians. Then a highly suggestible paranoid schizophrenic acts on the hype, and the media instantly blames the Tea Party. If they continue to hype this, it will cause more deranged copycats to act. And they knew exactly what they were doing. In fact, add to that, Matt Ryan, Of course, that's what they were counting on all along. After all, they're media experts. They understand psychology. After all, that's what they were planning all along. They understand how to manipulate the human mind. That's their specialty. But once you're aware of their propaganda tactics, it doesn't work anymore. Again, liberal media was already prepared for violence in Tucson. Editor's note from Alex Jones. What we have here is a clear case of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And this was done premeditatedly. They knew exactly what they were doing. The national and local media knew exactly what they were doing. They hyped to a pool of more, the census now says we're 310 million Americans, over and over and over again, that a deranged Tea Partier was going to gun politicians down. Then, a highly suggestible paranoid schizophrenic act on the hype, and the media instantly blames the Tea Party. If they continue to hype this, it will cause more deranged copycats to act. Now, how do we know this? If you go back to pre-1990 suicide numbers in high schools and junior highs, it was much, much, much lower. You can pull up the national news stories on this in the graphs. But everybody knows they hype the fact that suicide's way up, and it just gets worse and worse every year. It never gets better. And the more they hype that it's a problem, and the more they have meetings, and the more they have parents come to the auditorium and meet with their 11 and 12-year-old daughters and sons, and the more they have workshops about don't hang yourself with your shoelaces like this, don't take all the pills in the cupboard, the more children that would be thinking about playing in the creek or playing football or playing Barbie, the more these little innocent children who would never think about suicide, who would never think about such things, they're taught, don't do this. In fact, you see this all the time in places like New York and Chicago. The police, whenever they do have a jumper, climb up over the barricades that they have to stop them and jump off of the Empire State Building or the World Trade Centers before they were gone, or the Sears Tower, that always, right after somebody does jump, suddenly other people show up within hours or days and try. So they station cops right there to stop people. This is basic psychology. They know exactly what they're doing. Think about it. And it's the same thing here. Now we know from all of his friends that he was extremely suicidal, that he was completely paranoid and thought all his friends were out to get him. He was a complete schizophrenic. He thought he was being mind controlled. Maybe he was. I don't know. The point is he was nuts. Whether he was bent that way or whether it just happened because of genetics or upbringing or chemicals, who knows? And now we learn on local news over and over and over again, they would interview Representative Congresswoman Giffords over and over and over again and say, are you worried about the crosshairs? Are you worried about the Sarah Palin people? Are you worried they're going to kill you? Are you worried? Are you worried they're coming? And they had other national news constantly. Look at these gun rallies where they're openly carrying. They're going to kill some politicians. Look, they're spitting on the black members of Congress. There's going to be violence. You mark my words, they're going to blow people away. You watch it. You've got all these conservative people that love the Second Amendment so much, even if they wanted to, they'd never use a gun to kill somebody unless it was in self-defense, because they don't want you to be able to demonize the Second Amendment. They're out there openly carrying their guns because they're tired of getting SWAT teamed when the carpet cleaner sees a gun case in their house and thinks guns are illegal even in your own home. They're openly exercising the Second Amendment to regain it, because even though we have these rights, a lot of people live in la-la land and believe every place in the U.S. is based in New York City from all these TV shows, and that you go to jail if you have a gun. And so they hyped this and hyped it and hyped it, and there he was, already obsessed with her. Already 3 years ago, when he was described as a complete, liberal by all his friends, he was already obsessed with her. And then you had all these publications, Daily Kos and others, say, she's dead to me. She's a sellout. She's a problem. She needs to be dealt with. And you add all of this together, here comes the nutcase. And now they're hyping it again. Now they're pushing it. And they're pushing that more of this is going to happen. And so more suicidal people, instead of going and waving a gun around in public, waiting for cops to come shoot them because they don't have the nerve to pull the trigger on themselves, it gives them the idea, no, you don't commit suicide yourself. You don't just have cops do it for you, suicide by cop. You go and you shoot people. In fact, you don't just go shoot people at a McDonald's or at a shopping mall, because that gets you a lot of attention, which you also crave when you die, because nobody ever gave you any attention because you were so creepy. You could never get a girlfriend or get a date, so you're completely upset with yourself. No. Now the media says you go to an event and you kill people. Isn't that just special? And it's the same situation with the suicide education they've had since 1990 with federal grants nationwide. Everywhere they have it. They've even got comparisons. We've had sociologists and folks on to break this down. They'll have counties and regions where they don't have suicide education, and they'll have much lower levels, but then the counties where they do have much higher levels. And now you turn on Nickelodeon. I can't even let my kids watch television. It's all about don't commit suicide, here's how you do it. Or you turn on MTV, abortion's so cool. Next, kids that commit suicide. And then they have other TV ads for kids showing kids being murdered who don't accept the carbon taxes. They know exactly what they're doing. They're selling a culture of death where you hate yourself, where you're nihilistic, where you won't stand up for yourself. And they know exactly what they're doing. This article is very important. Liberal media was already prepared for violence in Tucson. They knew this was the guy who was after her, we're now learning. They were waiting. They were watching. They understood the different ingredients they were adding into this pot, and within minutes, they blamed their enemy, people that don't want a private Federal Reserve. Did you notice the talking points, whether it was Democracy Now! Or MSNBC or CNN? There are people who don't like the Federal Reserve and believe in a conspiracy that it's private, and a conspiracy that we should have actual gold or silver backing up our currency. It's not a conspiracy, it's in the Constitution. It's not a conspiracy, it's how the country was founded. It's not a conspiracy, it's what we had up until Nixon got us off of it. But they don't care. No, they could care less, ladies and gentlemen. They could care less. They know exactly what they're doing. They're out there saying, hey, there's crazy conspiracy theorists that don't like the Federal Reserve. It's their fault this happened. Now, that's showing you who the political power structure's enemy is. People who recognize who the shadow government is. But you guys can read your own Gallup poll. I mean, surely you know, depending on the poll, it's 75 to 85 or even higher that want to abolish the Fed and know it's the problem. I mean, game over. Stage all the shootings you want. Go, globalist. I hope you don't kill more little girls, either through mind control through the television or actual physical mind control, but you're going to do what you're going to do. We're going to be here exposing you. And, of course, you've also raised your ugly head and let us know who your other big enemy is. And that's the First Amendment. What do you want? You want our free speech, you want our guns, and you, most importantly in all the talking points, want us to shut up about that Federal Reserve who's butchering our economy and who's stolen tens of trillions and won't tell Congress where the money went. And Ron Paul's now the head of the committee over the Federal Reserve. You're panicking. A federal judge just ordered the private Federal Reserve to release its secret documents on gold manipulation. That's in the news today. You're really scared right now. And so you hyped up on television every day, day in and day out in the last 2 years, that people were going to get shot at these rallies. And finally, a schizophrenic devil worshiper who dressed up like a girl in his off time now has done what you want. But, oh, that's backfired. The family of the little girl came out and said, don't use her death to destroy freedom. So you're now attacking them, saying they don't deserve to have kids. You're showing how slimy you are, because you're not really bleeding heart liberals. You're cold-blooded social engineer crooks. Now, I said I'd take your calls. I'm on a roll today. I'm sorry, but Julio, Jonathan, Chuck, Ed, Ronaldo. In fact, Ronaldo in Italy. You're next. I promise. When we come back from this break, we're going to you. Right there. And then we're going to have David Icke pop in for 30 minutes, and I will continue throughout the entire third hour with calls. Okay, let's go to Ronaldo in Italy. Thanks for holding, Ronaldo. You're on the air worldwide.
Hey, hi, Alex.
Good to talk to you. Where are you calling us from in Italy?
I'm from actually a small town, Venastro, in southern Italy.
Well, good to have you.
Doing the show, Alex. Yeah.
What's on your mind today, Ronaldo?
Well, pretty much, Alex, this is a global problem, I mean, and it's incredibly serious. It's been with us for an incredible long time. I mean, you know this story, right? You know the conspiracies. I mean, you know the entire, Egypt, right? Evolvement. Like this problem has followed us throughout human civilization.
It has. I mean, there's always been the problem of secret guilds of people that know what makes humans tick, suppressing that knowledge and using it to dominate and control. Basically, for thousands of years, we've been under bondage of one form or another because the elites have learned basic psychology, sociology, anthropology, and they've learned what makes us operate, and then we're not taught that there's even this manipulation going on. But as soon as you're aware of it, just like as soon as you're aware of the private Federal Reserve, no amount of brainwashing works anymore.
It's like Thomas Edison. Imagine him, like he just discovered the light bulb. All of a sudden, it's like, wow, it's that powerful. You understand? It's knowledge, right? It
is. And then we learn that the Greeks and the Romans and the Chinese, more than 2,000 years ago, 2,000 or so with the Greeks, it's about 2,400 with the Greeks. It was pre-Roman. Those groups there were found to have batteries about 2,500 years ago as well. And also the Chinese right around the same time. They had batteries back then. It appears they had some type of filament systems as well for igniting something similar to a light bulb. So we're told Thomas Edison invented all of this. It turns out he didn't.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing with these problems that we have with the New World Order. I mean, in reality, we are not discovering anything new. I mean, it was already, everything has always been there. We are just unveiling it, for the first time, probably,
Yes, sir. I mean, it's just like Plato's analogy or allegory of the cave, where the people are in the cave watching projections from the firelight, and they believe the shadows of the puppets is the reality instead of what's going on outside the cave, and they will fight to defend that illusion.
Exactly. I mean, Alex, Plato, he knew it. He knew it. He understood it. We're talking about 200 years before Christ. I mean, it's incredible, but for the first time, like me and you, we can talk across the ocean,
Absolutely, and it's that technology, Ronaldo, bringing us together. And that's what scares the system. Ronaldo, is there an awakening happening to the New World Order in Italy?
It is, Alex, but it's very subtle. Like it's subtle, and unfortunately, this is disgusting for me to say it, but Berlusconi, the Berlusconi situation in Italy is very, very rooted. It's almost like a cultural, behavioral, psychological anchor that the Italians don't want to give up.
Well, yeah, a lot of times corrupt politicians, if they're flamboyant, the people actually buy into associating their personal identity with that person, and they actually like their servitude. That's exactly what we have here with the love affairs we have with Barack Obama or George W. Bush, but more and more that's changing. I've just seen reports of record numbers of Italians not paying their taxes now.
Well, Alex, that's pretty much the norm in Italy. This is why we have so high tax rates, because in reality nobody pays taxes. We have to invent all kind of situations and contracts to avoid, to elude taxes, so to speak.
In closing, what do you think of this shooter and the media, we now learn, hyping up that somebody was going to shoot Giffords before it happened?
Well, it's the same thing that happened with Berlusconi about a year ago when he was hit by like a Milan Dome statuette. It was about like a year, it was like a year and a month ago pretty much. And, we know it was all fake. In Italy, in Milan.
Absolutely. Good to hear from you, Ronaldo. More calls, I promise. We'll get to everybody. A full hour of calls and news coming up after David Icke leaves us in about 30 minutes. We will get to you straight ahead, but we've got to talk about this attempted frame-up of the media on the other side. Okay, if you were tuned in last hour, we played the clip of the demonization of David Icke. They called him an extreme right-wing conspiracy theorist. I mean, I'd have to, if you were using mainstream terms for David Icke, I don't think these terms are accurate, but that's what, if I was mainstream, I'd call him kind of a liberal New Age guy. You know, consciousness, waking up, I mean, a lot of those same tenets. Just incredible. I mean, I know when I first read his book 16, 17 years ago, it was in the New Age section of the bookstore, to put it to you that way. I mean, this is a peace, love, nonviolence guy. But about waking up, why would the Southern Poverty Law Center attack Ayn Rand and then David Icke in the same piece? Why are they now coming out against yours truly and Ron Paul? Pretty wild. And why is Satanism always attached to these killers, to these mass murderers, to these lone assassins? I mean, over and over again, the psychopaths, the devil shrines, they've always got them, or almost always. And we know now this guy had it. How is that Rush Limbaugh's fault? Well, they're calling for the fairness doctrine, where you can't have political views. You just got to repeat basically what the government press releases say. Now, going to David Icke, we're going to play this clip again. It's very short. I'm sure David's seen it, but I haven't asked him. But here's one of the clips. This is a couple hours after the shooting Saturday, and they talk about Ayn Rand. They talk about another author, and then they go after David Icke for conscious dreaming, which I haven't really heard David talk much about. Now they're blaming me for the conscious dreaming because I'm in the film Waking Life, a Richard Linklater film that is about that. I mean, this is crazy now. If you talk about daydreaming, you're now going to cause mass murder. Let's go ahead and play that clip.
This man also talked quite a lot in these strange videos of his about what he called conscience dreaming, but I think is almost certainly meant to be conscious dreaming, which is an idea that also has been kind of tossed around on the radical right, in particular by a kind of British conspiracy theorist by the name of David Icke. So a lot of these ideas, his burning of the flag, his talking about the government as treasonous, and using mind control to control the rest of us. And so.
No, he was talking in class about could he be under mind control. David Icke, we now learned that they knew he was death-threatening people and were doing nothing. That's Reuters. We now know the media kept asking Giffords over and over again, nationally and locally, is somebody going to kill you? Is somebody going to get you? Pretty much triggering this guy. They can program people who are unstable now through the television. They don't even need to grab you. You're an expert in this mind control, David, and they're now coming after you. Let's get into what you think of this shooting and all the rest of it.
Well, the fact that they're coming after me is makes me delighted, because if I'm rattling their cage, then I'm doing something right. The whole scenario is ludicrous, but perfectly predictable, because we've reached a point now where they are so desperate to push this agenda forward as fast as possible before the wake-up that's happening gets to a point where it brings it to an end, that the excuses now are getting more and more ludicrous. They're not even paying lip service to any even fake substance. Someone burns his bum on some small little device on a plane, and suddenly everyone's getting radiated every day in America in full-body scanners, thanks to people like Michael Chertoff, former head of Homeland Security and co-author of the Patriot Act. And now we have this situation where either one of the two, a guy who became mentally ill and mentally deranged from some sort of natural process, or quite possibly, because it's happening on an incredible scale, a manipulated, implanted process, it goes crazy with a gun, and immediately, on cue, just like when 9/11 happened, they were talking about Bin Laden immediately. The next stage of the whole thing unfolds where they're using it, and I have to say, I am so utterly disgusted and repulsed that these people can be so shameless to have no heart, no compassion, no sense of decency, that they can use an horrific event involving the death of a 9-year-old child, among many others, to push their political agenda, to defame and try to discredit those that are uncovering the very cabal that controls them. It turns my stomach. It makes me puke. This is the level of soulless, compassionless lack of empathy that we're dealing with the people that are pushing this agenda now.
It is just horrific to see this unfolding. Now, you've written extensively in the last 17, 18 years about Satanism and why we see it at Skull and Bones, Bohemian Grove, why we see it involved with almost every serial killer, especially those that go after children, altars. I called him as a Satanist instantly when I started reading about it Saturday, but on air Sunday. Then Monday morning, yesterday, the Newark Daily News and others had somebody sneak in his backyard. There was a full-bore tent, an altar. The family obviously knew about it. They're described as the Addams family by locals. Now their house is boarded up. I think the whole group needs to be investigated. But over and over again, and you've done deep research on this, there is extreme Satanism, but as you've proven, it's used as a template for mind control, and former FBI LA division directors that we've had on this show have gone over that as well. I mean, what's going on with this Satanism?
Well, as I've written and talked about extensively, not least recently, the 3 points of the monster, if you like, in terms of this area that we're talking about, are Satanism, mind control and secret societies, and pedophilia. And those all work as one unit. It's not saying every Freemason's a Satanist, every Satanist is a Freemason. Every Freemason's a pedophile, every pedophile is a Satanist, but there is a massive connection between them, not least in the way they use techniques, not only, Alex, to mind control people and get them to act, react, and perceive in the way that they're programmed to, but also, and we've talked about this before, it's about getting people possessed by very malevolent entities. That's what Satanism and satanic ritual and manipulation is overwhelmingly about. It's about putting another malevolent consciousness in control of that person's body, so it reacts and behaves in line with that malevolent entity. It's no accident, mate, that they've been talking about possession for hundreds and thousands of years in every culture, and they're still talking about it today.
And if you look at Loughner, you can't fake that. I mean, he looks like he's demon-possessed. And for those that are atheist or whatever, even if you don't believe this stuff, notice that atheism, in many cases, in his case, then leads to this occult voodoo with a skull and the oranges and the altar. That's what that is, ladies and gentlemen. And what is voodoo? Voodoo is possession by the spirits, and he was there wanting to be possessed, and I've researched voodoo. That's what that ritual is with a skull, by the top hat wearing skull, or the devil. In voodoo, he was asking to be possessed by the devil. That's basic criminology, and the key here is the globalists believe in this. When I infiltrated Bohemian Grove, they asked for the spirits of old Grovers to be there. They asked for the spirit of Moloch to enter them on videotape. I mean, even if you don't believe in spirits, folks, these people do. David Icke.
Well, the fact is, and I've talked to former Satanists all over the world over the last 20 years in my research of this, the hierarchy of Satanism is dictated by the power of the demons that possess you. That's why Satan is seeking more and more power and more status within these networks, are constantly seeking more and more powerful demonic entities to take them over. That's why some of the most demonically possessed people end up in the positions within the conspiracy, within politics and banking and business and military and all these things, media. And therefore it's no accident that all those operations working as one unit treat the world and control the world with such lack of empathy, lack of decency, lack of soul, lack of compassion, and it's everything is what is best for them, and the consequences for others are irrelevant. But there's another aspect to this which has to be spoken about if we're going to understand the Southern Poverty Law Center. It works with a network of organizations like the Anti-Defamation League and Abe Foxman, the Simon Wiesenthal Center, the American Jewish Committee, and others. And it's a network which is designed, and it answers ultimately to the House of Rothschild, designed to target anyone who gets too close to the truth about the conspiracy, to dub them racist, to dub them right-wing, to dub them terrorists, and potentially violent. And this is what's happening now. The Southern Poverty Law Center, I mean, where the hell the poverty comes from, Alex, I don't know. It's got assets of $200 million. Mark Potok, this guy, Botox, whatever his name is, $144,000 a year. The president and CIO, Richard Cohen, $351,000 a year. On it goes and on it goes. It's a money-making organization, which, like the Defamation League, something like $50 million a year in fundraising. It uses fear and it uses the threat of the far right to get people to fund it to enormous amounts of money and to keep that funding going. And also to do the job its masters put these organizations.
And then they train the police, and then they train the police.
People and dub anyone getting close to the truth as far right, and all the rest of it that was been coming out since this terrible event in Arizona.
But I mean, now they're attacking you, Ayn Rand. I mean, what's so threatening about Ayn Rand?
Well, what's threatening about anybody, Alex, is if they're getting close to uncovering the truth. And it is no accident whatsoever that they've turned their attentions to me. These groups had me in their sights back in the 90s when they were trying to get venues to ban me from speaking, and succeeded in places like Canada. But because what they were saying about me and what I say publicly, what I write, what I stand for, are so ludicrously different and opposed, it didn't stick. And this won't stick either. It's desperation. But it's no accident that on New Year's Day, I put out a major expose article across the internet. You can get it on my website. It's called "They Dare Not Speak Its Name, Rothschild Zionism," pointing out that Zionism is not about the benefiting Jewish people. On its play-out level, it's only a political philosophy. But the key point, Alex, is at its core, it is a secret society created by the Rothschilds, controlled by the Rothschilds, and it's there for the benefit not of Jewish people, many of whom incidentally fundamentally oppose Zionism, or Rothschild Zionism as I call it. It's there to serve the Rothschild, Illuminati, Rockefeller, subordinates to the Rothschilds' agenda. And therefore, these organizations have seen that, where I show the staggering ratio of Rothschild Zionist agents in government in key positions before, during, and after 9/11, etc. And suddenly that goes out, and bingo, they start turning their attentions on me through the Southern Poverty Law Center. I'm delighted because it means it's having an effect. And if they think they're going to shut me up, well, they can try for the rest of their lives. It ain't going to happen. We have to stand up to these people, and we have to open our eyes to some of the agendas and the people behind them and what's really going on. All these organizations, Alex, the Anti-Defamation League, Southern Poverty Law Center, Simon Wiesenthal Center, they all say they're human rights organizations. When they are taking away human rights and even helping to write legislation to take away basic human rights, the Anti-Defamation League actually makes its money and also does its business by defaming people. It's Orwellian.
No, I know. They're constantly attacking yours truly. We got to go to break, David. We'll come back and continue along this line and get back also into the mass shooting and where you see this going. All right, we only got David for this segment and the next, but I wanted to get him on because I did see his report on the free speech attack machine of the Rothschilds, and that really is who's financing it. I've done the research. And then you say, please don't lie about me. Please don't attack me. It's like, oh, you must be racist. and again, this has all been laid out. But these groups have gone too far, because now if you don't want government-run health care and death panels, they say, oh, you don't like black people. I mean, it just doesn't work anymore. And I want to get back into that, David, in the time we have with you, because we were having an interesting discussion during the break about Lou Dobbs and other issues that I was aware of. And then now Ventura's show, having some of the episodes pressured off air. And that's Homeland Security and ADL and others. I can tell folks, but I've been asked not to get into all the details. The problem is, once you're in people's confidence, you have to agree as a journalist to not get into, all the areas if they ask you not to, and that's their decision. But when you were talking about world leaders being into the occult and Satanism, it doesn't end with Ronald Reagan's wife being into astrology and all decisions being made on that. That's kind of the doorstep. Look at mainstream news with the former British Prime Minister Tony Blair being possessed every morning by a, quote, spirit and flopping around the ground and going to druidic sites and doing rituals. His wife being called a witch, is a witch. The head of the Church of England, now a druid priest. We have Francois Mitterrand, who built the 666-piece pyramid and admitted Luciferian. I mean, this stuff is not hidden.
Well, no, but also, we've got to be careful that, knowledge is knowledge. Knowledge and awareness is not good or bad. It just is. It's the use of it. And therefore, astrology is a science. I mean, we won't do it now. I'll probably never do it on this show, but I could talk for a long time about astrology and how it works and why it is. It's how you use things. And it's how you use this knowledge. And they use it in a very, very negative way. They understand, the people on the inside, how the psyche works, what the human body is, what the basic nature of this reality is. And therefore they use that knowledge to manipulate the people and the minds of the people and the perceptions of the people, even an individual target, for some particular event and horror, or the people en masse. And they do it but by having that knowledge and keeping that knowledge systematically from the public arena, where the people can have some access of understanding of themselves, their reality, and how it's being manipulated. And therefore, not only is it dangerous from these people's point of view to put out information about the banking scam and the financial scam and the global warming scam and all these other things that absolutely need to get out there, they are terrified of the nature of reality coming out as well. And so they target people like me, not just for putting the conspiracy stuff out, which I do, of course, like you all the time, but the other stuff. And it's information. What they've created is an information bubble to keep the people in ignorance of so much, including the nature of their own self. And anyone who is threatening to burst that bubble, which more and more people are now, means they have to get more and more desperate, and that's what we're seeing, and more ludicrous in the way they try to discredit, stop, block those people who are threatening the bubble.
Well, look at how the ADL Southern Poverty Law style folks going after Lou Dobbs, who's a great guy. Look, I mean, this is not civil rights or human rights. I mean, these groups really are at the forefront of trying to shut down free speech. They want the fairness doctrine again, and people need to stand up and say no.
Exactly. What we need to do is realize, because it's not difficult, it's blatantly in our face, that these people have no interest in human rights. They have an interest in destroying them. They have no interest in freedom of expression or freedom of any kind. They have an interest in destroying it, because the masters that they serve want to destroy it. That's the reason that they're doing all this stuff. So if they are targeting people, it means that the people must be saying something right.
All right, stay there, David. 5 more minutes with you. We got a 60-second break. Then it's your phone call. Stay with us. Final segment with David Icke. We're only having him on for roughly a half hour. Your calls directly, I promise, call after call, coming up in the next segment. But David was getting into censorship, and it is the Southern Poverty Law Center, ADL, other groups that claim, they're fighting the Ku Klux Klan, and then next they're saying, by the way, you shouldn't criticize health care. You're a racist if you do. Or David Icke talks about expanding your consciousness. That's extreme right-wingism. I mean, this is crazy. But they know exactly what they're doing, and they're now moving to restrict free speech, to bring in the fairness doctrine. And They are losing a lot of credibility, and the globalists more and more are scared. And that was the point I wanted to get into with you, Dave. We were talking during the last segment, and you agree with my view that there is an explosive awakening happening right now, and that's why they're trying to move to start curtailing the web taxes, web IDs, restrictions on speech all over the world. The globalists are in trouble.
Look, when a human rights organization allegedly tells you that they've got to take your freedoms and freedom of speech away, well, actually something's clearly blatantly wrong. They're a bunch of liars, they're a bunch of hypocrites, and we've got the Anti-Defamation League that claims to be a human rights organization standing up for people's rights and all the rest of it. Back in the 90s, it was exposed for having people working for it that were infiltrating what we would call today progressive groups, infiltrating Arab Americans, infiltrating Native Americans, and infiltrating black Americans.
Police stations and stealing files.
Passing information to the apartheid regime in South Africa about them and Mossad. This is the real Anti-Defamation League. This is the real poverty law center. Absolute hypocrites. Garbage.
I interrupted you to throw in that the ADL was actually convicted in California, breaking into police departments, having spies, getting police files on politicians.
Even a Mossad front, Alex. It's a Mossad front in America, just like AIPAC is, and just like the Simon Wiesenthal Center is. It is a Rothschild Zionist front. And it's amazing to me that people like Obama and all these moralizing people in the media and these moralizing politicians, these moralizing pseudo-human rights people like Mark Potok, they can't get a microphone quick enough when something like this happens, an horrific event like this, but they are quite okay with mass murder by America and Britain governments and military of people in Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, year after year after year.
The ADL and others were passing stuff through Israel to the apartheid regime that Israel just loved. You know, that's the kind of stuff we're not supposed to talk about. Like when Jimmy Carter said that it's apartheid over there in the Middle East, everybody got so mad, but Israel worked with the apartheid regime, including on race-specific bioweapons.
Yeah, Israel is an apartheid regime every bit as much as South Africa was, and every bit as much as America was in the time of the version of apartheid. And it's not only an apartheid state in Israel regarding Israelis and the Palestinians. It's an apartheid regime, even between different levels of Israelis and Jewish people. The way they treat black Jews from Ethiopia in Israel is little better than vermin.
David Icke, amazing. We're out of time. Okay, we've had some real troopers that have been holding patiently. We're going to get into some financial news coming up at the bottom of the hour and a bunch of other important news I haven't gotten to yet, but I do want to hear from callers. There is, of course, a giant push going to restrict the First Amendment. The most brazen I've ever seen in the U.S. calls for the fairness doctrine. That's an Orwellian term. It's very unfair. No more free speech on talk radio or TV. Right as the FCC, you notice, announces jurisdiction over the Internet. A month ago, right as the cybersecurity systems go online, right as Obama proposes Internet IDs, tracking you. I mean, it's all happening. And big calls for gun registration, assault weapons bans, it's on. And if they keep having easily suggestible mind control wind-up zombies, like this latest loon shooting Congress people, you know, the question is, will they start enacting laws against the Second Amendment as an attempt to protect themselves? And, of course, we wrote the story, Matt Ryan did, at Infowars.com. It's also going up on PrisonPlanet.com. Liberal media was already prepared for violence in Tucson. Editor's note from Alex Jones. What we have here is a clear case of a self-fulfilling prophecy. The national and local media knew exactly what they were doing. They hyped to a pool on national and local television of 300 million Americans over and over again that a deranged Tea Partier is going to gun politicians down. Then a highly suggestible paranoid schizophrenic acts on the hype, and the media instantly blames the Tea Party. if they continue to hype this, it will cause more deranged copycats to act. And that's the issue. What did they do back in the 60s and 70s when we had some real terrorism in this country carried out by communists? Of course, I call it real. A lot of it was actually grassroots. Some of it was like Patty Hearst and others. Turned out she was FBI. That was all staged. But you ignore and don't play up real terror or real events. I mean, it's on the news, and then that's it, and okay, let's not milk this. Now, though, when they stage an event, they hype it. Like I said last week, looks like these firecracker attacks were probably a grassroots loon. In Maryland, and the Homeland Security, the governor, Napolitano, both the governor of Maryland and Napolitano head of Homeland Security. You know, notice they're playing that down. That's because generally real attacks from our research are played down. But when they have engineered something like the underwear bomber or that nutcase psychiatrist out at Fort Hood, which we know was engineered, that's hyped to the nines. So let's go back to your phone calls here. Chuck, Ed, Jonathan, Joey, Mike, and others. Chuck in North Carolina, you're on the air.
Hey, Alex, how you doing?
Good.
I think one of the biggest stories, I don't think I've heard you cover it today, is last night on Glenn Beck's show, he decided to say, he told us that 9/11 truthers are going to be dangerous. He put it at the top of the list. Then he turned around to say that I'm not saying they're dangerous, but obviously that's what this whole thing is going to come back to. I think tonight we'll see Obama talk about how it's a conspiracy thing. The left wing and the right wing will both turn away from blaming each other, and it's going to come back to trying to make this guy out to be a truther.
No, I agree. In fact, that's what I've seen. Let's all come together because they couldn't blame Limbaugh and others successfully. Let's all come together against the truthers because now one of his anonymous friends says that in passing he didn't believe the official story. Well, we have a New York Times Angus and Reid poll where 83% don't believe the official story. Other polls are 54, 55, 66. You know, they run the gamut. So they had an Australian poll where 70 plus, was it 76% when the poll closed, believed inside job. So see, 9/11 people, they murdered children. Meanwhile, the father and mother are saying, don't use this for political control. We don't like what the TSA is doing. Let's not have America lose more liberties like we did after 9/11. But I don't watch Glenn Beck. I did see him a few months ago because, again, people tell us about it, so we went and pulled it up on YouTube, say the government is getting ready to stage a new Oklahoma City to blame domestic groups. And they've tried now, whether this was staged or not, to blame it on Palin and Limbaugh. And I've seen them try to blame it on Beck. And Fox News from Saturday, their tack was, oh, no, it's not the left wing or right wing. This guy was a conspiracy theorist before we heard the 9/11 stuff. So they've been desperately interviewing the hundreds of classmates from college. Was there 9/11? Was there 9/11? And Beck has always said, 9/11 truth is going to attack. I mean, I saw him years ago say, we need to use the Army against them. Why are they so scared of 9/11 truth? So Andrew Napolitano, his guest host, his fill-in host, and has the top-rated show on Business Network, he said he didn't buy the official story. Geraldo Rivera has now said that. I mean, it's just look at the facts. I got the cops saying, get back, we're going to blow up Building 7. The cops were told they were going to blow it up. They blow up a 47-story building. I can't ignore it. 6 of the 10 commissioners say it's a fraud. The evidence goes on and on and on and on. And Homeland Security admits 95% of the funding is for domestic groups, not Muslim-related. Even if you believe the Muslims did it all by themselves, which is ridiculous, it doesn't matter. Homeland Security is set up for the American people. And they've been gearing up for these domestic actions. And they've got mind control just via television down to such a science. They know there's X many violent paranoid schizophrenics in a population. They know there's X number on serotonin reuptake inhibitors that make them very, very suggestible. And they know they start hyping. Crosshairs are on you, Congresswoman Giffords. Is somebody going to kill you? I heard you're getting death threats. Are they going to kill you any time now? Meanwhile, this guy's making death threats and doesn't get in trouble. Meanwhile, his parents know he's got a voodoo shrine in the backyard. He's come on. Come on. I mean, look, The banks are imploding the economy. We're going into world government. They're taking our liberties. They're getting ready to start censoring free speech. And this stuff comes right on time. Is it, don't let a good crisis go to waste, like Rahm Emanuel said? Look, I started making a film about Beck, this Trojan horse, and others have picked up on that term and are now making a Trojan horse film. I've seen a trailer for it. And I decided to make it instead just about the overall neocons and how they operate with the liberals and how the thing's all interlocking. And I get so busy doing other interviews and radio and TV, you notice I hardly even make films these days. I just do interview after interview and put them on prisonplanet.tv, which is also highly effective. I said I'd take your calls. I don't want to get off into Beck. I know that when the Joe Stack guy flew his plane into the building, reportedly, Beck was saying 9/11 truther. I mean, he really, really... When the people learn the government's a lie, when they learn there's all this fraud, people went after Hitler. People went after Ceausescu. People went after Stalin and Lenin. I mean, you know, that's going to happen. I'm not even saying it's good. But the issue here is we're in crazy times and stuff's going to get crazy. Ed in Florida, you're on the air.
Alex, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
My battery's dying, so I'll be quick. First of all, I love your show, long-time listener. I had something happen to me a couple weeks, about a month ago. I recorded the show with Jesse Ventura, the FEMA camps. I went to play it back to my son-in-law, and it was off my DVR, which I own, legally recorded, never erased it. I called technical support at DirecTV. They told me, yes, they had the technology, but they would never erase it. Now I'm finding all these people...
Look, I'm not allowed to talk about it, but I was sent the internal documents with the order, with Time Warner threatening DVR companies, which all wire into your system unless it's a satellite and you don't have the phone line plugged in. And yes, they are internally now not just ordering the police state episode, but the company I was sent internal stuff on. But again, I can't show it because this is one of the lead people involved that sent it to us, but it's all the documents. They are ordering the entire show erased.
Okay, Alex, to keep up the good work, I love eFoods Direct. I had my first order a month ago. You still there?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. My phone's beeping. I'll hang up.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. Yeah, no, it's gone from everybody noticing that show never re-aired and all the others did to now other shows not being re-aired or not aired as much as the other programs that aren't as hard-hitting. And now I've seen the direct order to delete last season and this season because they're re-airing last season, this season, and now they're not airing any of them as much, or they're taking a few ones that are seen as more kooky, like the Mind Control, that aren't as strong. I mean, folks, let me tell you, that night when that show aired, because I hadn't seen the whole episode, I'd seen pieces of it when I was out in California, I called Ventura and said, congratulations, I can't believe you got that on air. And he said, I can't believe it got on either. And I called Tyrell, I called Braverman, and Braverman was like, man, there's major pressure getting put on because I don't want to get into it with you now. And then I learned more from other people since then. And now, because the congressman shot his mouth off, Cohen, I know some of the behind the scenes, guys in suits breaking into things, things being stolen, and threats. And Homeland Security went directly to Time Warner, and they've just decided shut the whole thing down. So we kept wondering how'd this get on air. The decision in certain quarters were made, let Ventura do it. You know, no one will believe it. See, they know that people are waking up, so they know the market's so big. The establishment's answer is, okay, let them go ahead and talk about it. We have the power. They'll never wake up. But go ahead and cover it. And then the show got top ratings on Wednesday nights, so they moved it to Fridays, hoping it would hurt the ratings. That's the dead zone. Still got great ratings. And now they're just killing it. And I'll be surprised if the show comes back next year, or if it does, it's going to be, and I don't think Ventura will do it, chupacabras and flying saucers. And I know Ventura's going to be like, I'm not doing it, no. I've talked to him. You've heard him on air a few weeks ago, last interview he did before he left the country in the winter to go surfing down in Mexico. And he just said, well, if they don't want it on, Alex, if they don't want it on, that's the way it is. I did my best. So, I mean, I've done my best. But we put something real on TV, and you're not going to be seeing it anymore. Because this country isn't as free as we thought. Or call straight ahead. Stay with us. Jonathan Jonathan in Kansas, thank you for holding, sir. You're on the air worldwide on 111 or 11111. So 111111. Go ahead, you're on the air.
Alex, it's funny how this guy, Chip Burley, attacks us and people in the truth movement. It's interesting. He cites the Southern Poverty Law Center, and he goes on to say that, it's partly anti-Semitic, and he's citing the Defamation Center or whatever, and they point out to Ayn Rand, who's Jewish. So which is it? Is it that they're with Ayn Rand, or that they're...
See, the psychology is even more sophisticated. The Southern Poverty Law Center has been caught not just infiltrating, but heading up Elohim City, where McVeigh was at, and others. And so what happens is they inject anti-Semitism, that, everything is anti-Semitism, to the point of people getting sick of hearing about it, and then actually putting the idea into people's heads, and then Jews get persecuted, and then that makes Jews give even more money to the ADL, or Southern Poverty Law Center. ADL especially, that's their model. And so, again, it's basic psychology. And the globalists know psychology. That's why they're so hard to beat. But being aware of the tricks is how it operates. But basically, you don't like government health care. You don't like the private Federal Reserve. You don't like people trying to take your guns and private property. You are a Nazi. Or you hate black people. And it's just cold-bloodedly used as a political weapon. And then people politically correctly just go, okay, I'll do whatever you say. I'll keep my mouth shut. Please don't call me racist. But the good news is people are sick of hearing about it. They're tired of it. They see through it. And then the government goes out and funds the more radical white supremacist groups and others to make them look extremely crazy and dangerous, so that there can then be calls for more restrictions on free speech. I mean, they figured this out. I mean, just like the government had Hal Turner running around calling for violence for more than a decade. And he was a protege along with Fox News host Sean Hannity. And it turned out he was the highest level national security asset. But really good points, Jonathan. Anything else?
Yes. Also, notice how Chip Burley, Amy Goodman keeps asking him if he has evidence, and keeps speculating, which is interesting considering that he's theorizing of a right-wing conspiracy while attacking conspiracy theorists.
Well, I mean, David Icke is anything but right-wing. I mean, he goes to Africa with medicine men and sits there in, like, long dances and rituals crying his eyes out. I mean, let me tell you, David Icke's effective because you believe all of what he says, or 95% or none of it, but the guy is for real. He really believes what he's saying. Believe me, award-winning, Oscar-winning best actors can't. I mean, I've seen videos of Icke just bawling, when how much he loves the African people, and all the rest of it. I mean, if anything, he's a real bleeding heart, and they're calling him a far right-wing guy. I mean, it's just it's asinine. I appreciate your call, Jonathan. Joey in Jersey, you're on the air.
Hey.
Hey, buddy.
How are you?
I'm good.
All right, I got a question here. I want your opinion on this. With the SPLC coming out and blaming David Icke first, rather with me, I would take you and him down first, like with Alex Jones and with David Icke. Why would they push him more under the bus first rather than yourself? Because the way I would look at it, like I would go and attack you first before David Icke, with him talking about the reptilian race and everything. And it's just really confusing, and you have to take a step back.
Well, I think that Potok was saying that because he could make a connection to Icke, because the guy talked about conscious dreaming, which I guess Icke has talked about some, but so have a lot of other people. So I think that's why, and the guy talked about the individual against the world, which a lot of crazies have, not just people that are into liberty. And so they were trying to make whatever connections they could. I mean, I instantly, before the media even picked up on it, I said, didn't Palin put crosshairs on districts? And I tend to remember Arizona being one of the big ones. And sure, we put that in our article. We said, will the media go with this? And sure enough, they were, by the time we got our article out, they were doing the same thing. But we were just looking at who would they blame. So it was whoever they could make tenuous connections to. This sheriff is in a lot of trouble because he had nothing to link Limbaugh. I mean, Limbaugh's pretty milquetoast. He's certainly not calling for violence. So it's just like Oklahoma City when they blame Limbaugh. I mean, they're basically blaming anybody and everybody they don't like. Okay, let's go through 5 calls in the next 5-6 minutes, and then I want to get into a bunch of financial and world news, and we'll go back into your phone calls. But Mike in Illinois, you're on the air worldwide. Good to talk to you.
Hi there, Alex. Good to talk to you. I just want to implore you and your audience to read the book of Jasher that was written by Samuel in the Bible and the book of Enoch. It ties right in to what's going on, the genetic modification, a half bear, half man by the 12...
yeah, there is a lot of crazy stuff even in Ezekiel and in Genesis with genetic mixing and humans being mixed by these weird people flying around in big ships. I mean, I challenge folks to go actually read the Bible for yourself. It's some pretty interesting stuff in it. But, you know, I really don't get into all of that. I just get into what I can absolutely document that's happening right now. You know, I tell the public for 20 years they've had part spider, part goat creatures, and I get letters all the time that I'm a stinking liar. They won't search the term spider goats, or that they've got a mouse with a human brain, or that we've got on our dinner table scores of different so-called plants that grow their own pesticides in them that we're eating, and that attack our liver and cause all sorts of problems. And I can't get folks to admit what's real, you know, much less what's speculation. Very interesting, Mike. Tom in Florida, you're on the air. Moving quick here. Go ahead, Tom.
Hey, Alex. How you doing?
Hey, buddy.
Hey, I was on Paxil for about a year in 99 and 2000, and I just want to tell you everything you're saying about the effects of that is 100% correct. It was crazy, Alex. I mean, literally the first month I was on this stuff, all I thought about doing was killing myself, like nonstop. And back in 99, Paxil was a relatively new drug, and I started getting these panic attacks, and I thought that I had something physically wrong with me.
And let me guess, the doctor, when you went and complained, the quasi-psychologist, isn't really a real doctor, said, don't worry, you need another drug on top of it.
Yeah, you'll love this. I went to all these doctors, like regular doctors. Finally, I went to an internist because I kept thinking, well, maybe I have food poisoning or something. They couldn't find anything wrong with me. So the internist goes, there's nothing wrong with you. Go see a psychiatrist. Right? So I go to the psychiatrist, and literally within 5 minutes of sitting down with this guy, he says, okay, what's wrong with you? So I tell him what's wrong with me. He goes, yeah, you have what's called panic disorder. And he says, I want to put you on Paxil. That's what you need. And back then, they weren't telling people that you had suicidal thoughts. All he said to me was, all right, you're going to feel worse for like a couple weeks, and then it'll kick in, and then you'll start feeling better.
Yeah, but let's be clear. Let's be clear. I can't tell you how many times on a train or in a restaurant, I've been sitting there next to women mainly for some reason going, yeah, I'm really feeling suicidal and really depressed. And the woman will start, but... And usually it's some young woman with her mom or something, but they say now that I'm on 3 different ones, I'll feel better, but I wasn't like this before I went on it. And in the drug trials of the serotonin reuptake inhibitors, massive suicides, massive killings. I mean, cops will tell you, every time they pull up and a woman's chopped their kid up, they go, yep, look in the medicine cabinet, they're going to be on it. I mean, the cops knew this 20-something years ago. It is a hallucinogen. They are in the hallucinogen family. And yeah, you know, if you took LSD every day, most of the time you'd have a good trip, but other times you're going to go nuts and jump out a window or kill your kids. And that's what these are. And marijuana, I get these idiot emails going, why are you bashing marijuana all of a sudden? Look, I'm for decriminalization, but marijuana is a powerful drug, and it's great for most people that have anxiety or problems. But with schizophrenics, it will make them go into paranoid episodes. It's in the hallucinogen class. Okay, I've actually done the research. So it's not reefer madness for 99.9% of people. But for paranoid schizophrenics, they get dangerous on marijuana. It's a fact. I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead. Well, you were making a point.
No, that's all right. I was just saying also that what the serotonin drugs do to you is they make your whole body feel like like you're falling asleep and you're kind of floating away. All your like nerves become really tingly, and it's a terrible feeling. I mean, one day I woke up after a year, Alex, and I just said, I got to get off. This is awful.
Well, here's the deal. Do not go off cold turkey. That causes a lot of the shootings. You go off that stuff cold turkey, it is going to be bananas. You got to go off very slowly under physician's care. I want to tell everybody that. That's what the physicians have said on this show. I'm not getting medical advice. If you go off this stuff, you got to be deadly serious about it, because sodium fluoride, as medical doctors have reported, is an adjuvant to serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and they magnify the effects of it. But how did you get off of it?
I just did it myself, man. I knew I had to get off it slowly. I knew that. So I just weaned myself over like a 2-month period. I just gradually cut down.
Now, you were wanting to commit suicide. Did you ever think about killing people?
I was thinking about that. I don't remember thinking that, but this is the weird thing, Alex. You don't just think about generally killing yourself. You think about specific ways to do it. Like, I would walk down a street. I lived in New York City at the time, and you'd look at like a tall building, and you would think, I could go up there and just jump off the roof and end this right now.
Yeah, and what's happening is they're putting 10, 12, 13-year-olds, especially girls who are very suggestible, on these. They're committing suicide en masse, and they don't even tell the parents, hey, this makes you commit suicide. It's like, here you go. Bye-bye, little girl. Have a nice day. And I appreciate your call. Now, when I'm driving through traffic, and I'm going 65, and I see a panhandler on the corner, I think about, if I was to swerve, I'd kill that guy. Not because I'm thinking about I want to kill him. My brain's like, okay, there's a car pulling up at that stop sign. He could run it. Let me slow down a little bit in case they, run that stop sign. Or I'm coming to a red light. Okay, that bum looks really drunk. That red light's probably going to change the green before I get there, but he may wander out in the road. I better get over in this other lane. But see, somebody who's put on a serotonin reuptake inhibitor, it gets rid of impulse control. And so you're in a hallucinogenic dream state is the best way, is what it does. And so you're just like, oh, it's a dream. Well, I'll just, run him over. And it's not that you're even wanting to be homicidal. It's that your brain's having those calculations. Okay, watch out, I could run over that bum. Okay, there's a truck coming there. You got to have defensive driving. The brain's taking it all in, changing the radio. I'm scanning. And these women that kill their kids and husbands, but predominantly hear this, it's like, I don't know. I just couldn't stop thinking about drowning my children. So I got them all dressed nicely and took them each one in and put them under the water. The 8-year-old, the 7-year-old, the 5-year-old, the 2-year-old. I just don't know, officers. And they go look at the medicine cabinet. She's on 4 or 5. The average Texas foster child, it's the same nationwide, is on 7 psychotropics. Until they start having seizures, they're on so many. And then it's like, oh, we'll put you on an anti-seizure med. They've had some physicians go public about this. This is hardcore. All right, and you just know, the police said we're going to arrest him if he doesn't go under psychiatric care in September, and they won't say he's under psychiatric care. They always work while it's big news, keep it quiet. In a few months it's going to come out. I'm going to be here on the show with the article that guy was loaded up on stuff. I'll bet my bottom dollar he was on Ritalin-type drugs from the time he was about 10, because the school demanded it. Schools ordered me on Ritalin, and my dad said no way. And he went in with literature about how it shrunk the size of the brain and all that, and they shut up, because I was raising my hand a lot and stuff like that. Kind of like you get a little puppy and it's running around, on the floor wanting to play with you. Do you drug a puppy because they're doing that? No. It's what young mammals do. See, I said I'd take a lot of calls, and I'm not taking a lot of calls, am I? Who's up next here, John? Tony in Florida, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex. How's it going, man?
Oh, pretty good.
I wanted to share with you, I'm a former Bright House Networks employee, and I had actually called you when they were training us on how to listen to the phone calls and tell whether the customers were arguing and to document things like that. And a buddy of mine, I no longer work with the company. For some reason, about a month after I called you, I was let go from my job at Bright House. But 2 friends of mine who have Bright House both had the Jesse Ventura episodes taken off their DVR. And when they told me about it, I thought they were absolutely nuts, because as someone who worked there, we were taught that we can't do that. And when I went over my one friend's house and I searched on his DVR log, there's a place that you can go to see when something is removed and when something's put on, no matter why it's removed, whether it's full or whether you just take it off. And the show did not even list that it was ever even recorded or taken off. And that just shocked the crap out of me because I had watched it on his DVR, and I said, surely the DVR was just full, and that's why.
No. And listen, it's still on YouTube, though they're jerking it down off certain sites, the police state episode. You know, there's only like on one version 120,000, another 80,000, another 50,000. I mean, there's not even 500,000 views of the police state episode. I'm here on a syndicated show telling people, folks, you better watch it. You better get it. I mean, we're not making up that Homeland Security threatened True TV to remove it, and then there was an attempt to cover that up until Ventura went public. And then now they're threatening all these different DVR companies. There's litigation going on or starting behind the scenes where some companies go, we have a contract that we're allowed to have that on people's things. And I mean, this is a big news issue that they're now using DVRs to remote erase things. We wrote articles about it weeks ago. No mainstream news, no nothing. But over a decade after I was first told this, operators, cable people, telephone company folks, private plumbers with any big company, large parts of the profit of those companies is the tattletale money. I saw 60 Minutes years ago about a guy, he sued for discrimination. A black guy owned a arborist company, and he would fly to Houston and other cities to go see the trees he was buying. Then they're shipped by 18-wheeler. And one place liked cash, so we got a discount. And the woman behind the counter saw that he paid for the ticket with cash and stuff. This was like in the late 90s. And had the air marshal steal his money and take it. And they ruled, we can take your money. Doesn't matter if you got receipts or you're buying trees. And the point is, there's spies everywhere. And, I had a guy from the carpet company call the police on me years ago, or try to when he got back, and they said, no, you're allowed to have guns in Texas. He's in my house, he sees a gun, and tries to call the cops. I mean, this is mental illness. And yeah, the cable guy's spying on you, and it's so creepy when you got to have work people from big companies in your house, and they walk in, they ask questions, and you're sitting there trying to read a newspaper or play with blocks with your kids on the floor, and they'll try to act like they're being friendly talking to you, but you know the questions and the order, and it's just like, come on, man. I'm here to pay you money. The cops can't get in here without a warrant, but you're in here spying on me. And I don't even do that. But then I made the mistake of, telling the Enterprise rent-a-car lady that, and she went ahead and double charged me just to show she was boss. I mean, it's just a culture wanting to get taken to hell, wanting to be robbed by government. I mean, so many Americans love tyranny. And don't worry, they're going to get everything they want. So they're at Bright House Networks. Were you based out of Florida, or where were you based out of?
I was based out of DeLand, Florida, and we were actually trained because I was not someone who went to out of house. I was a telephone representative. Our whole call center was trained to listen to calls while we're on the phone. If we heard a baby crying in the background, to start asking probing questions on if everything's okay, what might be going on, were the parents sounding stressed out, were they yelling at their kids?
No, I know. Listen. I'll be out over the years. I've got 3 children at parks, and it's always women. And they'll walk over and they'll go, what happened to you? My son has a birthmark on the side of his head, and they always ignore you. They go, what happened to you? What happened to you? What happened to you? Was somebody mean to you? I had a dog that got out and got hit by a car. They'd always come over to the dog. Do you have a sticker in your foot? Is he mean? And I was in a hotel over vacation, and the CPS-looking woman is on the elevator, and one of my daughters barely was sun-kissed on her legs, had just a little bit of a pink, which is healthy and good. And the woman's like, how did you get burned, sweetheart? Is your daddy abusing you? And I knew not to respond. That's what was making her mad. She was just looking at me just going, I mean, they love the power of the state. They hate the family. They are just criminals. And they're just everywhere. An army of control freak trash is now upon us. We are in so much trouble. And now the uniforms, the weapons, the power, the camps, and they're just being given the power unto them. And And they're calling CPS on parents that don't give their kids vaccines. No law, they'll still take your kids. They're calling the police when neighbors see an old man putting a rifle in their car to go hunting. They're calling the cops. In the country, they're calling the cops. It's just a nation begging to be hurt, begging to be spies, begging. And so, yeah, there you are. Is something wrong with that, with your child? And you see this everywhere now. And it's just, and it's like, no, nothing's wrong with my child, but DynCorp runs child kidnapping rings, you little spy. A person, why don't you deal with some real crimes, or the million dead Iraqis, or Israel radiating 110,000 of their kids, let me tell you about some crimes. Our government shooting up kids in Guatemala with syphilis, or GMO crops hurting people, or the tenfold increase in seizures from the last flu shot. Admitted. See, it's all about making us bad, and Walmart telescreens and tattle on everyone. We need to face just how bad this is. So tell us just a little bit more about all the spying that went on.
Well, I mean, that was basically it, Alex. We were told to listen in on conversations. When I brought that up to my supervisor that it seemed weird, I was kind of really shut down. The next day, you had the report on your website about Bright House, and then I called you. And then a month later, I was brought into my manager's office and let go, and for really no reason. So, I don't.
Well, that's because they're partners. Well, no, they're partners in infrastructure protection, and they were given that little tip, and the computers were listening to everything. Just that's freedom. We got a little tip. You're not liking it, and you like the cold radio shows. Bye-bye. Listen, I appreciate your call. We're going to get into some financial news now in this segment and the next. But, I mean, that's not freedom, folks. Every creepy company out there's looking for trouble. Meanwhile, there's illegal aliens, crack dealers on the street corner. Oh, don't call the police on them, but spy on everyone else to pack these giant prisons. The government report on drugs while they're on record shipping most of the drugs in. Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.